as with everything, it's like a flywheel. It's really hard to get going, but you just have to keep banging it and banging it and banging it. And then when that momentum gains, for those who do want to do multiple deals, things start to head off pretty quickly. Yeah. Started the Property Mastermind program in 2012 and did 18 deals on my year on Mastermind. And then we did 168,000 from the portfolio, and that was a combination of purchased and leased HMOs. Within an hour, like I literally scrutinised all the markets, and the best return on investment, the best market on the growth curve was Lincoln. And between Nottingham and Lincoln, I built a HMO portfolio of about, I can't remember what it was when I finished Mastermind, but I got it up to about 200 rooms.
Hello and welcome to the latest 100K Club interview. And this is my series of interviews of people who've been able to achieve a £100,000 or more profit per annum from their property investing. Most of these people have done it in a very short amount of time on my Property Mastermind program. And I'm delighted to be joined today with a successful property investor and serial entrepreneur, Mr. Daniel Hill. Welcome, Dan. How are you?
How you doing, Simon? You well?
I'm fantastic, thank you. And Dan, first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to share some time with us today to really inspire people. I know you've got an incredibly inspiring story, and I'm sure people get loads of value from this. So let's start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from first, Dan.
Yeah, so my name's Daniel Hill, and I'm the Managing Director of PPN UK, which is one of the UK's award-winning leading property groups. We focus on investment, development, management and training. Lifelong entrepreneur, so been an entrepreneur for literally as long as I can remember. Had a small group of companies up till 2009. Started looking at property in 2010 and then did the Mastermind Accelerator in 2011, did my first deal, and then started the Property Mastermind program in 2012 and did 18 deals on my year on Mastermind. And then
hang on a minute down here. So I know you've been a serial entrepreneur for many, many years. It's kind of in your blood, right? But prior to the Accelerator and then Mastermind, you didn't really have any property experience, right?
No, I'd moved around the UK. I lived in a rented apartment. I ran some clothing companies in Nottingham and a couple around the UK.
Yeah.
And then, always wanted to get into property. I used to be a builder, so I used to be on the buildings. I always thought I'd get into property, but then went to university, started a clothing company, and then decided to take the leap of faith after the crash in 2008 when it leveled out in 2011. And then
so it was a great time to buy. So let's just talk about what you actually achieved on Mastermind, because it was an incredible year for you, and you really focused on HMOs.
Yeah.
And so remind me what your overall results were that you achieved in that 12-month period.
Well, it did take me a whole year to do the first HMO. So I did the Accelerator, I went to a PIN meeting, understood what HMO was, did the Accelerator, and then did one and tested it.
Yeah.
And then when I started Mastermind, obviously got all the, the community, the drive, a bit of friendly competition, and did 18 HMOs.
So that made a real difference from, obviously on Accelerator, you got the knowledge how to do it. We only did one in that time. I know you were running obviously your other businesses at the time as well. So you were doing it very much part-time. So what was the incentive to come on to Mastermind? Obviously you had that massive step change in results, but you're a successful guy. Surely you could do it on your own. What was the incentive to come on to Mastermind?
I think it's the same as anything. When you want to learn something, you need to find somebody to teach you. And the same as kids go to school and, young adults go to university, entrepreneurs, need to go to class as well. And I looked around all the different trainings. I read your book, Property Magic. And obviously everyone aligns to different values. I think mine and your values have always been pretty similar. So I think that accessibility, do the right thing, values-based culture was what appealed to Mastermind. And I do like, I'm an entrepreneur. I do like a bit of competition, bit of a push. So I thought I'd try and break the record and just go for it.
At the time, I mean, it's been broken since, but at the time, I think you got the highest income anyone had got from scratch within a 12-month period. I think was it 120,000 profit a year you were making?
Yeah, we did. So Gavin Barry held the record previously. Gav's been a long-standing friend of mine. I thought I'm definitely going to have his was like 98,000.
Yeah,
We did 168,000 from the portfolio, and that was a combination of purchased and leased HMOs. That was
yeah,
before voids, because it was a 12-month period. It was pretty much full, and it was a
yeah.
booming market before voids and maintenance. Yeah, it was 168,000. So
Yeah,
it was a great result.
And most of those, didn't you do it with very little of your own money?
Well, the plan was to sell my clothing company. I don't know if you remember.
I
said,
do. Yeah,
I'm going to sell my business and go for this. All like I was built up for it. I thought you were going to give me a standing ovation. And then the first workshop, you were like, you don't need to sell your business. Use other people's money. So I did.
yeah,
I used the money that I had and like retained profits and savings, and
yeah,
then I invested family members' money, and then I went and did private investment money. So yeah, about $500,000. Well, I'd have to work out exactly what it was in total, but very little of my own money, maybe 50 grand of my own money, and then all private investors.
yeah. Fantastic. So let's talk through. And what areas were you buying those in?
So again, like literally follow the mastermind blueprint. Find somewhere, best place within an hour. I was living in Nottingham. Within an hour, like I literally scrutinised all the markets, and the best return on investment, the best market on the growth curve was Lincoln. And between Nottingham and Lincoln, I built a HMO portfolio of about, I can't remember what it was when I finished Mastermind, but I got it up to about 200 rooms.
Yeah, and obviously from that also you went on then to build actually a big HMO management business as well. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, only by default. I mean, we want ideally, again, just following the Mastermind blueprint was don't manage the properties yourself. It's not a good use of your time. So I looked for agents that could manage it, and it didn't really work very well.
Yeah.
Although the single lets did, I gave that to other agents. The HMOs, gave it to other agents, didn't work, couldn't find anyone to do it. So we built our own, and then other landlords wanted it managing. That was in Lincoln. Then we opened an office in Nottingham. And then in 2015, we opened this is our third head office, but we opened our first head office in Nottingham. And then we started opening agencies around the UK. And we've got 7 offices around the UK now, and plus the head office.
Yeah, and at the time, that, as you say, they were because normal letting agents don't understand about managing HMOs, but now there's yourself and quite a few other people, mainly masterminds actually, who've set up management businesses so they don't have to look after properties themselves, so they can make it a profit center rather than having it as a cost center. So it's a great strategy. And have you got, what's one of your favorite deals that you did, or one of your best deals? So you can just talk us through some of the numbers and how that came about.
So probably a good one for people who are listening, especially if they're starting out, is the first deal was probably one of the best because I scrutinised it, made sure it was a deal. I bought it for 82,000, spent 18 on it. This was in Nottingham before Article 4. 82,000 on it, spent 18, so it was in for 100. Rented it out for 18 months and made £1,000 a month.
Yeah,
and then flipped it on at 140. So I had £1,000 a month cash flow for 18 months, and then flipped it and got 40,000 cash. I made 58,000 in 18 months. And for a first deal, that was really, really good.
Yeah, it kind of proved to you this stuff works, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still remember the nervous point when you buy the first property and you stand on the stairs with the keys, and you're like, I've actually, this has actually got to work now. I genuinely remember it.
I hope that Zutshi was right about this.
Yeah, I remember standing there just thinking, just thinking, is this actually going to work? But then, you get comfortable and you start doing ones with little refurbs, and then we started buying them 2 at a time, like next door to each other, converting them into 2 6-beds, refinancing out, and then now we do bigger HMO. In fact, I'm just doing a HMO up the road. I bought a big hostel and tried to get planning for 12 flats, and they only gave me 10. So I've actually, because of all the COVID stuff that's going on, we've had the council basically knocking our door down to rent it for emergency accommodation.
Yeah.
We've gone back to the planners and said, basically, the council really want this building. You've outright refused it as a HMO. The licensors said they can force a license through for 29 people in 2 weeks. We just need you to give us planning. And our refurb's 10 grand. So I bought it for 440. I was going to spend 300 grand on it, and it'd be worth 1.05 million. after 300 grand refurb, I'm now doing a 10 grand refurb, renting it out to 18 units. Some of them will be couples to basically LHA,
Yeah.
and it'll revalue up between 700 and 800. So,
fantastic.
you know,
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, and that was looking to be my worst deal ever because I've had it for a year and I've just boarded it up. It's not been doing anything.
Yeah.
But then on the spin of a penny, you know, we've gone to 200 to 300 grand equity and about 60 grand cash flow. So
yeah, from one deal. Fantastic. And obviously that's not the kind of deal you do as a first deal, obviously, but it's about progressing up and doing bigger and better deals as you get more advanced, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's understanding your market as well. If you want to find those sweet, well, at least for me, we invest around the Midlands, like Birmingham, Nottingham, Lincoln, Derby, anywhere sort of north of Northampton and south of Sheffield, really. Yeah. And that's sort of your nice, hot, like sweet spot for purchase price and rent roll.
Yeah.
And if you can get some cheap stuff, like one I bought for 75,000, spent 15 on it, so it's in for like 90, and it refinanced at 160. And I remember I actually got money back out of the deal, and in fact I've just sold it at I think I've just sold it for 140 or 150.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk about how you found most of these deals, Dan, when you're on Mastermind. We've had lots of people share different ways. So what were your main strategies for finding deals, or did you do everything?
To be honest, I'm definitely a very fast-paced entrepreneur, like a fast-growth entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I tended to go for the mass market. So I did do most of mine through agents. I did purchases, lease options, and rent to rent.
Yeah.
And I just basically used the strategies you gave on Mastermind, and then just made sure that I was top of the pile. You know, if I said I was going to buy something, I bought it. If I said I was going to buy something and bought it, I did it quickly. And just develop those relationships. And then, as with everything, it's like a flywheel. It's really hard to get going, but you just have to keep banging it and banging it and banging it. And then when that momentum gains, for those who do want to do multiple deals, things start to head off pretty quickly.
Yeah. But I think you're right. It's a result of all the steps and works you've done for the months and months before, and then suddenly those relationships and that work starts paying off, doesn't it? Yeah,
and I think people think, I definitely did when I was a young entrepreneur, like 10, 15 years ago. I used to think there was some sort of magic or like hypnosis or NLP about how to get people to do stuff. When you know how to play the game and you can just have a frank conversation, you understand everybody wants to just do a deal, and if it works for everyone and you do the right thing and you're a good person, I find business strategy reasonably straightforward. Obviously, it's never without its challenges, but it's not as daunting. Everything's, I don't know what a good quote is, but everything's really daunting until it's done. And then when you do it once, you're like, well, that was like you and I before this call were talking about development that I'm doing, looking at 2 developments, raising two lots of £1 million. And I'm thinking, do I feel comfortable with that? Because, normally I do slightly smaller deals. But once I've done it once, then the concept of borrowing 10 million will be the next.
Exactly. It's stretching your comfort zone, isn't it? And just getting used to a new level, basically. And I think the more successful you get, I used to think that, once you're successful, you'll have all your money you need and you'll have no more problems. But I believe actually the more successful you get, you just get sent bigger problems by the universe to deal with.
Without a doubt, it definitely doesn't get easier.
No,
but you do spend more and more time in your flow. I think I spend a lot more time now on strategy and growth. And my first employer, I remember the first time I recruited our full-time bookkeeper for £1,200 a month, thinking, oh my God, how's that going to work? Yeah, and that was 10 years ago. We've got a £40,000 a month payroll now, and it genuinely doesn't faze me in the slightest. It's just that growth curve. We're all here to grow, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about funding as well. So you talked about raising private finance there, and you kind of mentioned earlier that you only had a reasonable pot, say 50k of your own money, and then because we taught you to use other people's money, that's what you did, and used strategies like rent to rent and PLO. We didn't actually need to use much money. Do you think that helped accelerate the growth of the portfolio?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the real, because we did 18 in 1 year, the real growth there was using rent to rent, because I got to a point, it was very clear what my strategy was. Basically just to break the mastermind record. But there's basically only it's only so fast you can buy a house, and they're very capital intensive. Where a rent to rent, without like hand on heart about exaggerating, we would pick up keys on a Friday, and be marketing the rooms to let on a Saturday. Whereas if you're going to buy a house, obviously it's months, not days or weeks.
Yeah, so there are quick ways of generating that cash flow coming in. And also you've got to give a rent to rent back, but for those 3-5 years, it works really, really well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's definitely an entry level strategy. I probably wouldn't do it hugely at this stage in the game, but it's an amazing way to cut your teeth, make mistakes, learn how the market works. Everyone does it, and then as you get more developed, you do more purchases, and using private finance as well. That works really well.
So how have you found that, Dan? Because a lot of people struggle with that concept of using other people's money and raising it, and they're often worried about speaking to others about it. What's your approach been to that?
Well, the first phase was immediate networks. So it never fascinates me how many people have got 50 grand sitting in the bank at 2%, 2%, something like that. Immediate contact. So first it was me, then it was me and one of my friends, then it was me, and then me and my dad, because he had some endowments coming to fruition, whatever it's called. Then it was one of his friends. Then it was somebody that I met at a PIN meeting. Yeah. And I think the first phase is get people who trust you more than the deal, and you get that first phase of momentum going. And then when you've got a few deals done and a bit of track record, as long as you invest in your profile and you do the right thing and you get a good track record, there's without a doubt. I mean, you and I have said this for years. There's more money than there is deals.
Absolutely. Finding the deal is the real skill, and actually the money is relatively easy compared to that.
Yeah, the deal is everything at the minute. Like, the deal is absolutely everything. So I understand why people are daunted by it. Everything's daunting until you've done it. The first time I flew a plane, I thought I was going to die. But once you've done it a few times, you figure out, you figure out it's just part of the process, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Dan, if you were to give people some, and we have a lot of people, as you know, on Mastermind, people like yourself who are relatively new to property. We have some really experienced people who might have been investing for, 15 years or so, and they come on and then in a year they double up their portfolio. You've met some of those guys, obviously. But what would you suggest? Some pretty good general tips for people who want to achieve the similar kind of success you have and very quickly get to that 100K or more profit coming out of their property. What are some of the tips you give people?
It always takes longer and costs more than you think.
Yeah.
I think probably is hope for the best, expect the worst, and you won't be disappointed. I think what I would probably say a top tip for my mistakes would be because there's lots of different things like Roger Hamilton says, you treasure what you measure, and whatever it is you focus on, you will achieve without a doubt. The law of attraction. If you want if you want £200,000, if you want 200 HMO rooms, you'll get to 200 HMO rooms, but they might not be profitable. If you want 10 grand a month profit, it might only be 100 rooms. It's like, what is the most important? And if it is profit, my biggest learning would be, I've probably done a few deals that I've never made any money on. But they've been the way that I've learned how to do the ones where you do make money. Yes. And I think the strategy would be, do that first phase of proof of concept, do one or two, really understand the market, understand the reality, get it right. And then once you've got that cookie cutter, that's what I did on Mastermind basically. I did the Accelerator, learn out how to do it. And by the time I started Mastermind, I'd got a tiny bit of experience under my belt, and then just did the cookie cutter and did the same thing over and over again. Yeah. And that worked really well. Protect the downside. So, nerves and anxiety and stuff like that only come through like a lack of preparation. A lot of people look at some of the deals we do, especially the majority of developments we do, we buy without planning. And people think that's really, really risky. Well, it is really risky if you're taking a punt. But if you've done your due diligence, you've done your surveys, you understand the local plan, your architect's on board, the council are on board, all of it can be de-risked before you do the deal. And with like HMOs, it would be, what I did was do the Accelerator, understand how to do it, get on Mastermind, where there's a network of people who've done it, and go around and ask every man and his dog questions, soak up all the information, do the due diligence up front, and then open the taps. So
and I think that's important, because quite a lot of people who've been on this interview have talked about how they've created a very good income, and then they've progressed on to do developments, which is the way we teach. You should get that income coming in first, because, and you know, Dan, that sometimes developments can take, say, longer than expect, they cost more than expect, and they swallow your money. And actually, I think if someone tries to do that first, that's not the right way to do it. It's my personal view. You got any thoughts on that?
It's very black and white. On Property Entrepreneur, so for those who are watching this who don't know what Property Entrepreneur is, so Simon and I partnered on this a few years ago. You got Mastermind, where you learn how to do the investing. And then for those that want to become a property entrepreneur, we show how to build a business. Strategically, one of the first things we teach is what we call the wealth hierarchy, which is a triangle. Yeah. And it's got 3 layers. The first layer that's got to be satisfied is cash flow.
Yes.
Service accommodation, rent to rent, HMOs. You've got to be able to sleep at night knowing the mortgage is paid, the money's coming in, repeat, and that's cash flow. Yeah. After that, you then need to build your capital up. So you move into profit strategies, and profit is a lump of cash that's not cash flow. You don't pay your salary. It's a lump of cash. That's flips, build to sell, deal packaging, lumps of cash. And then finally, or development, build to sell developments. And then the top bit is assets. And that's you think cash flow's salary, profit is bonus, and then asset is your pension fund. So that's your, you build to rent, your vanilla buy to lets, your blocks of flats that you save for the long term. So you definitely need to go through it in phases, not just for your confidence, but strategically. Development is feast and famine. If I had to pay my mortgage off these developments, I've got a development in Derby. I was due to sell before Corona for 860,000. That was nearly £1 million worth of liquidity back in the bank, and the whole thing fell through. It's not going to sell now for another year, but it's rented out, so it doesn't matter. Whereas if I needed that to pay off the loan sharks or pay my mortgage and fill my fridge with food, it would be a very stressful time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's great of us. That's a really good model, Dan. So the final thing I want to ask you is, how has this experience of being able to get this income and just give that control of your life, how has it changed your life, Dan?
I think the good thing about property, so I've always wanted to get into property, and with the cash flow strategies, I used to run a clothing company, and it revolved very heavily around new sales. Whereas when I understood how to build a cash flow portfolio, obviously it's not a passive income, it's a managed income. It needs some attention, but it is as close as you get as like repeat revenue. I think what having the HMOs and having Multi-Let UK and those sort of repeat cash flow businesses have done is gives us the breathing space to have. I mean, obviously everyone's not here at the minute, they're all working from home, but it means we can have a head office, a national sales team, and all these costs and overheads, including my own, that are all paid regularly on a monthly basis. And then now my time is spent doing proper wealth strategies, which is like developments, building bigger businesses, buying other companies. But there's no way I could do that like with my clothing company, because I'm constantly relying on new sales. So it's the security of the foundation, and then it is ubiquitous. Property is ubiquitous. It is endless. You can do development, care homes, whatever. I think it's a great industry to be in, and the strategies that you've taught me to how to execute have genuinely been like game changing.
Fantastic. So Dan, that was pretty much it. I think people are going to be massively inspired, especially those entrepreneurs who want to create other businesses from property. That's exactly what you've done, and expanded out within the property industry as well. So it's been really inspiring. I'm sure we've got massive golden nuggets from this. So thank you for your time, Dan, and hopefully we'll see you very soon, and best of luck. Thank you.
All the best. Let's catch up. Cheers, Simon.
And
Take
cheers.
care.
I do hope you've enjoyed that video. I've actually lined up the next video that I recommend you watch. And also, if you'd like to book a consultation call with one of my team to discuss how we can help you, click on the link below and book a call with my team right now.